I'm Percy Weston, one of the founding directors of Surman Weston. We started our practice about 6 years ago in 2014, and the other director is Tom Surman. Ditton Hill House is in Surbiton, which is a suburban satellite town of London, really, and it's one of the kind of archetypal suburban towns. This project was a single dwelling, two-bedroom dwelling, but 250 square meters, so quite a generous two-bedroom dwelling. And one of the quite unique elements about this project, we had an exposed structural steel exoskeleton on the outside of the house. So there are several challenges that this presented to the project, one of which was, of course, making sure that this structure was weather resistant. So we used galvanizing to weatherproof the structure, and so the structure was completely prefabricated off-site. We determined with the engineers how we could best break down that structure into kind of enormous, I think they were kind of 5-meter panels, all pre-welded, and yeah, it meant that the whole structure was delivered to site and went up in about 2 days, which was amazing. And yeah, we've got a long design life for the house, which is exactly what we needed. We also had a fashion designer client who was totally uninterested in the local context, and the examples she gave us were Palm Springs, kind of Californian modernism. It was quite an interesting design challenge to reconcile both these kind of Palm Springs modernism, industrial language, with the suburban mock Tudor, which is the site's absolutely surrounded by. So we kind of took these two ideas and played with how to mesh them together, and so that's how we developed the kind of aesthetic language on the outside of the house, and that's how we came up with the idea of having this kind of exposed structure on the outside of the house. And then instead of using kind of timber, as is common in the mock Tudor, we decided on making steel because of the strength. It meant we could have the structural members much smaller. And we kind of stripped it back, so you have this very kind of elegant, thin structural grid exposed on the outside. And unlike a lot of the mock Tudor houses, ours is actually structural, it's not just decorative. And so that clearly presented quite a few issues in terms of cold bridging. So we had to develop some details to prevent cold bridging from the external structure to the internal structure. And then clearly the durability of the structure was concerned. So that's why we used galvanizing to make sure that steel frame wasn't going to degrade over time. So we spent a long time developing the details that meant that the structure could be completely prefabricated and then bolted together on site. So there was no need for site welding or anything like that. Before we painted it, it was quite nice. We made sure that we used a nice brick, a nice mortar, a nice coloured slurry. So actually under that paint is rather a nice finish that, in 20 years time, they might decide that they don't want to have this kind of completely white house and just strip off the paint, and it's got rather a nice finish underneath as well. So the paint was purely an aesthetic thing at this stage.